Have you ever realized that everything you've been taught to keep quiet about is precisely what holds you back? Sex and money. Two topics that society has shrouded in shame. Don't talk about it. It's ugly. It's dirty. But do you know what's truly dirty? Living a life of silence, blocked and impoverished spirit because you believed in the rules of the herd. Carl Jung once said, "What you repress becomes shadow, and your shadow today may be the very energy that could make you abundant." The ego resigns itself to working like a slave. The persona poses as a demure saint, but within you pulses a force that no one has been able to quell, your sexual energy. It is brutal, magnetic, creative. It is the spark that generates life, but it also generates ideas, business, and wealth. Tesla understood this and sublimated his energy to create inventions that changed the world. You, on the other hand, may be wasting it on pornography, distractions, and guilt that only weaken your soul. What I'm about to show you here isn't comfortable, nor should it be. These are 3 secrets that religion has hidden, that society has suppressed, and that to this day leave many people trembling just to hear. But if you have the courage to face them, you'll discover why the universe only responds when you vibrate with desire. And when this energy awakens, there are no miracles. Money comes, opportunities appear, and even your presence begins to hypnotize those who cross your path. The gold hidden between the legs. There's a hidden treasure that no one has ever clearly explained, but which Carl Jung already intuited in his reflections on spirituality and archetypes. This gold isn't in bank vaults or buried trunks, but in a much closer and more intimate place, between the legs. No, it's not just about sex in the physical sense, but about the vital energy concentrated there, which the ego, with its persona maneuvers, tries to repress or distort. Culture has taught us to feel shame, to lower our eyes when this topic arises, as if it were a sin to even think about it. But if the body holds such intense power, why waste it? Imagine what it would be like if this energy were channeled not just into momentary pleasure, but into the creation of something lasting: business, relationships, even works of art. Tesla already said that the sublimation of sexual energy was part of his genius, and Jung saw the sexual instinct as one of the most powerful symbols of the unconscious. The gold hidden between the legs is, in fact, the key to transforming desire into creative power. Think of the body as a power plant. If electricity is misdirected, it short circuits, but if organized, it lights up entire cities. Sexual energy works the same way. It can be a fire that burns addictions and compulsions, or it can become a light that fuels projects and expands consciousness. Most people don't realize this because they're stuck on autopilot, believing that pleasure is just a physical discharge. Spirituality, however, shows that pleasure is a portal, and Jung reminded us that archetypes linked to fertility and eros are symbols of psychic expansion. Those who learn to look for this gold without fear of shadow work, without masking it with the persona of "I'm too evolved to think about that," discover an infinite mine. A practical example? Instead of using desire as an escape, transform it into fuel. Go running, write, paint, study something new. The body responds, and the unconscious opens new doors. This hidden gold isn't measured in carats, but in vitality. Observe someone who blocks their sexual energy. They're usually dull, dull-eyed and devoid of enthusiasm. Now compare with someone who has learned to consciously flow with this energy. There's magnetism, there's presence, there's something that naturally attracts. And here's the detail few talk about. This gold doesn't disappear with age, it simply changes form. Even older people can activate this energy if they stop repressing it and begin to respect their bodies as temples. Ritualizing small moments helps. Dancing alone in the bedroom, breathing deeply while visualizing the energy rising up the spine, writing about desires without censorship. It's not about debauchery, it's about inner alchemy. And with each step of this intimate journey, one discovers that much of the pleasure that was held back wasn't dead, just dormant, which leads us directly to the next inevitable point. Traumas that blocked pleasure. When we talk about pleasure, many people imagine only something physical, but Carl Jung already warned, the body is only the surface. The unconscious holds the true blocks. Traumas act as invisible chains that bind sexual energy and prevent its flow. It could be a word heard in childhood, an experience of repression, a criticism that caused the ego to develop a defensive persona. All of this becomes a shadow, and in shadow work it appears strongly. I don't deserve pleasure. It's wrong to feel desire. If I surrender, I will be punished. Spirituality shows that these blocks don't disappear with time. They transform into symptoms, cold relationships, a lack of enthusiasm for life, even psychosomatic illnesses. And that's why releasing pleasure is not just an intimate act, but a therapeutic healing process. Repression of pleasure can manifest itself in small, everyday things. Someone who feels guilty about resting, who can't accept compliments, who freezes when hearing a sincere, "I love you." All of these point to deep-rooted trauma. Jung explained that the shadow isn't something to be eliminated, but rather integrated. In other words, instead of denying these traits, we need to face them head-on. A simple exercise is to write down, without filters, all the phrases that come to mind when you think of pleasure or sexuality. Then, read them aloud and realize, whose voice is this? Is it yours? Or is it the voice of a father, mother, teacher, religion? When we identify the source, the weight lessens. This act of naming is a way to release trapped energy. But remember, healing doesn't happen all at once. It's like opening a multi-layered safe, where each password represents a different insight. Working with archetypes, Jung realized that the unconscious speaks through symbols, and traumas also hide within symbols, erotic dreams, distorted memories, even fantasies that seem too strange. None of this is random. They are messages begging to be deciphered. And when you have the courage to face them, you realize that pleasure wasn't the problem. The problem was the wound covering it. Spirituality helps transform this process into a ritual. Guided meditations, circular breathing, tantra practices, or simply sincere conversations with yourself. Because by unlocking pleasure, your entire life warms, and your body once again remembers something sacred that should never have been forgotten. And it is at this point that the need for re-education arises. Desiring without sinning, the re-education of the sacred. For centuries, desire was portrayed as the enemy, and spirituality was confused with abstinence. But Carl Jung reminded us that desire is the language of the unconscious, and ignoring it only reinforces the shadow. The ego, by donning the persona of pure or right, tries to silence this inner fire, as if it were a sin. But the truth is different. Desire is not wrong. What destroys is repressed desire. It's like dammed water. The more you try to hold it back, the greater the chance the dam will burst. Re-educating our view of the sacred means understanding that the body is not an obstacle, but a temple. It's not about limitless indulgence, but about reconciliation. After all, if nature placed this impulse within us, why deny it? The problem isn't desire, but how we've been taught to deal with it. This re-education begins with something simple: changing the narrative. When someone feels desire, what does the mind repeat? This is wrong, this is ugly, this will distance me from God. If so, it's necessary to deconstruct. A practical way is to exchange guilt for gratitude. When feeling attraction, instead of repressing it, the person can give internal thanks. My body is alive, my energy is pulsating. This small gesture shifts the internal archetype from sin to celebration. Ancient religions already understood this. Dionysian rituals, tribal dances, even fertility celebrations were ways of honoring the sacred in desire. Jung would say this is the movement of integration, uniting spirit and body, shadow and light, without the need for masks. Desire can be prayer as long as it transforms into consciousness. Of course, this isn't something you learn in a single day. It's like relearning to walk after years of limping. A useful exercise is to combine spirituality and bodywork, tantric yoga, Osho's active meditation, or even writing daily about how desire manifests in the body. This intimate journal is powerful because it reveals patterns. When does desire arise most strongly? In what situations do I feel guilty? By observing, one realizes there's no demon, just energy begging to be acknowledged. Shadow work here becomes fundamental, facing inherited judgments head-on and replacing them with awareness. And the more one re-educates this perspective, the more one discovers that desire is a bridge, not a wall. A bridge that connects instinct with divinity, matter with spirit. And along this path, a curious insight emerges. The uterus, symbol of the feminine, holds a secret that goes beyond the biological. The uterus as a quantum vault, even in men. When we talk about the uterus, many think only of female anatomy, but Carl Jung would say that the uterus is also a universal archetype, a symbol of the internal space where something is gestated before birth. Modern spirituality calls it the quantum vault, as it stores a creative power that transcends gender. In men, this uterus is not physical but psychic, an internal place capable of conceiving ideas, projects and dreams. It's as if each person carries an incubator of possibilities. The ego and the persona try to reduce this to the biological, but those who look beyond it realize every human being has this empty space that can be filled with intentions. And the most fascinating detail is that the more we honor this space, the more it responds, as if it were an energy bank, ready to multiply what it receives. Imagine the womb as a safe where you deposit symbols instead of coins. Every thought, every emotion, every desire is like a seed left there. If the seeds are of fear, what will grow? More fear. But if they are of love, courage or prosperity, what will germinate will be something much greater than yourself. Tesla said that everything in the universe is energy, frequency and vibration. And Jung reinforced, archetypes function as invisible matrices that shape reality. When these two perspectives are combined, one realizes that this inner womb is a portal between the conscious and the unconscious, between the material and the spiritual. A simple practice is creative visualization. Before sleeping, close your eyes and imagine this inner space receiving clear images of what you want to experience. It's not just imagination, it's energetic programming. Many resist this idea because they believe that only women have the power to give birth. But here we're talking about giving birth on another level. Not children of flesh, but children of consciousness. Men who connect with this archetype discover a new form of shadow work, integrating feminine energy, embracing rather than simply imposing, feeling rather than merely reacting. Women in turn learn to value their uterus not just as an organ, but as an oracle. A powerful exercise is to place your hands on your belly, even for those without a physical uterus, and breathe deeply as if blowing energy into this vault. This creates a vibrational field that reprograms the unconscious. And the most surprising thing is that when this inner space awakens, one begins to realize that even sex ceases to be a physical act and becomes a symbol of something much deeper. Jung and Tesla's transmutation. Carl Jung and Nikola Tesla, each in their own way, pointed to the same direction. Sexual energy is not just a release, but the raw material for creation. Jung observed that the unconscious uses desire as a symbol of something greater. Tesla, in turn, believed that the sublimation of this energy fueled his genius. When the ego reduces this force to mere carnal pleasure, the potential to transform it into creativity, focus, and spirituality is lost. Have you ever noticed how, after a period of conscious abstinence, many people experience mental clarity and an unexpected creative impulse? It's not coincidence, it's transmutation. This inner alchemy doesn't mean denying the body, but redirecting its power. It's like taking steam from a boiler and instead of letting it escape, using it to power a locomotive. Transmutation is precisely this, transforming instinct into action, desire into expression, pleasure into power. But how can we apply this in our daily lives without falling into extremes? The secret lies in balance. Repression creates shadows, but waste weakens. Tesla lived the extreme of abstinence. Jung recommended integration. For practical life, the middle path works best, observing desire, embracing it, and consciously choosing where to direct energy. For example, when feeling aroused, instead of rushing for immediate gratification, one can breathe deeply, close their eyes, and imagine this energy rising up their spine to the top of their head. This simple exercise activates creative centers and provides clarity to solve problems or generate new ideas. It's a form of inner yoga. And for those who prefer more practical actions, use this moment to write, paint, study, or even start a long-delayed project. The energy that would drain away in minutes can last for hours of productivity. This transmutation isn't empty mysticism. It's the science of the mind united with spirituality. Jung would say it's a process of individuation, integrating instinct and consciousness to live fully. Tesla would prove that everything is vibration, including thought. By uniting the two, we have a powerful key to prosperity and self-knowledge. It's almost as if sexual energy were a universal currency. It can be spent on immediate pleasure. It can be stored in ego repression, or it can be invested in something greater, just like money. And herein lies the irony. When this energy is well utilized, even sex itself transforms. It ceases to be merely biological and becomes a symbol, a language, a portal. And it is at this point that the inevitable question arises: what happens when sex ceases to be just an act and becomes a living symbol of the unconscious? When sex becomes a symbol. For Carl Jung, nothing in the unconscious is literal. Everything presents itself in the form of symbols. Sex then transcends the biological dimension and becomes a language of the psyche. When a dream shows erotic images, it doesn't just signify repressed desire, but messages from the unconscious about integration, creativity, or even power. Spirituality reinforces this by treating sex as a ritual, not just an act. The ego, however, tends to reduce sex to performance, to numbers, to the achievement of validation of the persona. However, when viewed symbolically, sex ceases to be about two bodies and becomes about two forces meeting: masculine and feminine, shadow and light, matter and spirit. This vision changes everything because it teaches that pleasure is not an end in itself, but a mirror of what the soul wishes to manifest in the external world. In practice, this means that every sexual experience can be a mirror. A mechanical, disconnected relationship reveals a fragmented unconscious dominated by masks and personas. A deep relationship, where there is surrender and vulnerability, reveals psychic integration and openness to the self. This is why so many spiritual traditions have used sex as a path. From Tantra to Taoism, from the myth of Isis and Osiris to fertility archetypes, all showed that uniting bodies was also uniting worlds. To apply this to everyday life, simply observe: how do you experience your sexuality? Does it reflect haste, anxiety, a need to prove something? Or does it reflect presence, surrender, and trust? This simple self-analysis is already a form of shadow work because it reveals which aspects of the shadow are trying to control the act. And here's the beauty. When sex becomes a symbol, even money begins to be understood differently. Because both sex and money are energies of exchange, of flow, of giving and receiving. Jung would say that both are archetypes of power that reveal how we approach life. When someone is afraid of surrendering themselves in sex, they are usually also afraid of receiving financial abundance. When someone uses sex to dominate, they tend to use money in the same way. This is no coincidence, it's an unconscious pattern. So if sex becomes a symbol, money can also stop being seen as cold and material. It vibrates, it pulses, it responds to one's internal state. And this is precisely what leads us to the next inevitable point. Understanding that money, far from being something distant, vibrates with the same desire that moves the body and soul. Money is not cold. It vibrates with lust. For a long time, money was seen as something cold, calculating, and devoid of emotion. But if we look at it through the lens of spirituality, we realize that it is pure energy in motion, just like sex. Carl Jung would say that money carries archetypes of power, abundance, and collective shadow. It's no wonder so many people feel guilty when earning more, or fear losing everything. These are unconscious symbols speaking. The ego, disguised as a socially correct persona, insists that it's ugly to associate money with pleasure. But in practice, both vibrate at the same frequency. Have you ever noticed how people who are passionate about what they do attract prosperity almost naturally? This happens because the energy of desire is aligned with the flow of money. Money isn't cold. It responds to the intensity, dedication, and emotional vibration you bring to your choices. Imagine money as a lover. If you treat it with fear or indifference, it pulls away. If you suffocate it with obsession, it escapes. But when there's respect, a play of seduction and freedom, it flows. Tesla said that everything is energy, frequency, and vibration, and money is exactly that. Those who put passion into their work, enthusiasm into their ideas, and passion into their projects generate a magnetic field that attracts opportunities. Jung would point out that this magnetism isn't a superficial law of attraction, but a manifestation of the integrated unconscious. A simple exercise: take a banknote and hold it for a few seconds. Observe your reactions. Do you feel guilt, fear, anxiety, or pleasure in holding it in your hands? This observation already reveals your symbolic relationship with abundance. And changing this relationship begins within, not in your bank account. Money, like sexual energy, is neutral. It merely amplifies who you already are. In the hands of an insecure ego, it becomes a compulsion or ostentation. In the hands of someone conscious, it becomes a tool of transformation. That's why shadow work in this field is so essential. Questioning where your financial beliefs come from, what archetypes of scarcity you inherited, and how your persona deals with wealth. When you understand that money vibrates with desire, working ceases to be a sacrifice and becomes a ritual of creation. You don't earn money, you generate it, invite it, seduce it. And the more you learn to receive without guilt, the more you realize that abundance is a natural extension of inner vitality. And this is precisely the next step, unlocking the pleasure of receiving, without fear, without shame, without constraints. Unlocking the pleasure of receiving. Many people know how to give, but almost no one has learned to receive. Carl Jung would say this happens because the collective unconscious has linked the act of receiving to the shadow. You're selfish. You don't deserve so much. You'll owe later. The ego then dons the persona of the generous, the one who only gives and never asks for anything in return. But behind this mask lies fear and guilt. Spirituality shows that the flow of life is both giving and receiving, not just one way. When you refuse a gift, a compliment, or even an opportunity, you are blocking the very channel that could bring abundance and pleasure. This blockage doesn't manifest only emotionally. It also appears financially and sexually. Those who have difficulty receiving affection generally also have difficulty receiving money because both belong to the same archetype: openness to life. A practical exercise to unlock this pleasure is to start simple. Accept compliments without justifying yourself. If someone says, "You look beautiful today," don't respond, "Oh, but it's just that outfit." Just smile and say thank you. This trains your subconscious to realize that receiving is not a sin. Another practice is to open yourself to small gifts. When someone offers to buy you a coffee, accept. When someone offers help, allow it. These are everyday gestures that reprogram the psyche. Jung would remind us that the subconscious is transformed by symbols, and each gesture of acceptance is a powerful symbol. The more you receive without guilt, the more the archetype of abundance strengthens. And little by little, the pleasure of receiving ceases to be strange and becomes natural, like breathing. The body responds with ease, as if finally allowed to relax. And here's the irony: many people desperately seek pleasure, but don't know how to receive it when it knocks. This applies to sex, love, and money. It's like dying of thirst at a spring and unable to drink because you believe you don't deserve it. Shadow work at this point is crucial. Writing down all the times you sabotaged yourself by not accepting something good and noticing the repeated patterns. This simple act reveals how the "I can handle it all alone" persona is actually a prison. Unlocking the pleasure of receiving is opening yourself to life in its entirety. And when this happens, the body, previously seen only as matter, reveals itself as an oracle, a space where spiritual eroticism can finally flourish. Spiritual eroticism, the alchemy of the oracle body. Few realize that the body is not just flesh and bones, but a living oracle that speaks through sensations, shivers, desires, and intuitions. Carl Jung said that the unconscious expresses itself through symbols, and eroticism is one of them, not as cheap pornography, but as vital energy that reveals hidden archetypes. Spirituality teaches that the body is a temple, but also an alchemical laboratory. It is here that sexual energy transforms into love, creation, and vision. The ego and the persona try to reduce eroticism to performance or sin, but when viewed consciously, it is the language of the self. Think of that sudden shiver when listening to music or the heat that arises in certain presences. This is not just biological, it is the body oracle showing paths. Spiritual eroticism is precisely this state of attention where each sensation becomes a message. In practice, it's possible to transform the body into a tool for self-knowledge. Conscious breathing exercises, spontaneous dances, tantric yoga, and even meditative walks activate spiritual eroticism. It's not about genital arousal, but about energy vibrating in every cell, as if the entire body were a magnetic field. Jung spoke of the importance of integrating shadow and light, and here's one way to do it. Embrace both desire and intuition, realizing that both arise from the same source. When you touch your own body with presence without rushing, it responds with unexpected revelations. The body begins to indicate when a decision is aligned or not, when someone deserves trust or not. It's as if the inner oracle were always there, but dormant. And activating it means learning to listen to what previously went unnoticed. This spiritual eroticism is also alchemy because it transforms pain into power. Experiences of rejection, guilt, or sexual repression can become fuel for refined sensitivity. It's like polishing a rough stone. The more blows it receives, the more it shines when polished. Shadow work helps this process by teaching us to look at our marks without shame. When the body is seen as an oracle, even scars become sacred inscriptions. A useful exercise is, before bed, to slowly run your hands over your body, thanking each part, including the ones you least like. This creates a new relationship with matter and opens portals of intuition. And as the body awakens as an oracle, something greater happens. You realize that the universe itself seems to be conspiring, as if it also takes pleasure in seeing you excited by life. When the universe wants you excited. There are moments when everything seems to align, unlikely coincidences, unexpected encounters, opportunities arising out of nowhere. Carl Jung called this synchronicity, and spirituality interprets it as the universe responding to your vibration. The ego, always rational, tries to explain it as chance or luck, but anyone who has experienced it knows there is something greater orchestrating it. The detail is that this movement only happens when the energy is pulsating, when you are excited by life, not numbed by fear or routine. The universe wants you excited because this excitement is a sign of alignment with the self. It's as if the cosmos were a mirror. If you vibrate desire and enthusiasm, it returns with events that confirm this state. If you vibrate apathy and guilt, it also responds, but with blockages and repetitions. The secret is to realize that the universe does not punish, it merely reflects. When someone awakens this state of vital excitement, even everyday life changes color. The streets seem more vibrant, the people more interesting, the ideas clearer. This isn't naive magic, it's the psyche in motion. Jung reminded us that the collective unconscious connects to everything around us, and when you activate your sexual and spiritual energy, you access this network. The universe, in this sense, isn't a distant entity, but a quantum field in constant dialogue with you. A practical example. How many times have you thought of someone and that person appeared? Or desired something intensely and days later, a related opportunity arose? These signs aren't mere coincidences, they are answers. The universe wants you excited because this state generates movement, builds bridges, and opens paths. The flow of life accelerates when you open yourself to it with excitement. But here's the provocation. What if this excitement wasn't just for external achievements, but for the very process of living? The universe isn't just interested in giving you a better job or a more passionate relationship. It wants you to awaken to the joy of existing. Shadow work, by facing the shadows that steal your enthusiasm, returns the body and mind to this natural state. The persona may feign happiness, but the self vibrates authenticity, and that's what the universe recognizes. A simple practice is to start the day with something that excites your soul, listening to music that moves the body, writing about what you want to create, or even going for a walk, feeling each step like a dance. Because when you live excited by the very act of being here, life responds with abundance, encounters, and miracles. And this is where we get to the heart of it all, how to activate this energy and transform it into real wealth. Have you realized that everything that seemed sinful, dirty, or forbidden is actually the source of your strength? Carl Jung once said that denying the shadow is living half-heartedly, and perhaps that's what's kept you stuck until now. Shame of pleasure, fear of money, guilt for desire. But what if, starting today, you choose to see this energy as liquid gold flowing within you? What would you do with this power if you knew it could create real abundance? Will you continue to indulge your ego with cheap distractions, or will you direct it like a master to open pathways to wealth and purpose? You have a choice. Repeat inherited patterns of repression or reprogram your unconscious to vibrate in abundance. Now I ask you, will you just listen and forget, or will you apply each of these secrets to your life? Because knowledge without practice is just mental decoration. If something has awakened in you, don't let it fade. Apply it, experiment, test it on your body and in your routine. And of course, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications, because this is just the beginning. The true dive into the power of your sexual energy and the creation of your own wealth begins now.